they sound really good on paper and practical. Is this one of those, and do you feel like this is something that is practical and can work, especially given that unemployment is a huge problem that we have in Kenya and has very negative effects? Just like Sakaja has mentioned, one of the biggest threats to our security is unemployment. What do you think of the bill?
I think, for me, once we begin mentioning and dividing society into the young and the old, the black and the white, etc., there's still, I have a problem when, for example, you're doing an interview and you begin asking people how old they are and where they stay and whether they are married or
What's
single.
Your second name?
No, what is your second name and things like that, because they become a basis very subtly of beginning to position you and situate you.
It's a form of discrimination.
It's a form of discrimination that we need to address. But at the same time, there's need to be able to have a database where you can be able to draw from and see what these are the skills that we have in this country. And if I'm looking for A, B, C, D, I can go here and go there. And so I think there's a certain sense to which you think this database would be useful for somebody who is looking for certain specific skills. And as Bwana Mheshimiwa here is saying, you can be able to, it could inform other sectors of society. But could it be that the overall goal that it seeks to serve relative to other interests that we face is not all balanced up? And I think maybe as it is being debated and we are exposed much more to what the details are, one will be able to see. But I will just worry about once you begin to designate. Because
actually there's no discrimination in the bill. The focus is on young people, because obviously, even if you look at the statistics, the bulk of the people who are unemployed in this country are youth. That itself is the discrimination. Many young people, when they go to look for jobs, they're told, do you have 6 months experience? Do you have 5 years experience? That is the discrimination that we're talking about. You cannot say trying to solve an issue of youth employment. And this agency is open to everyone of all ages, by the way. It's open to everybody of all ages. Okay. But you cannot say by trying to assist, because the Constitution, Article 55, states clearly that the state will take action, even affirmative action, to create employment for the youth. Right. Is that discrimination or is that affirmative action?
I like the ideas contained in the bill. However, as I mentioned to Mheshimiwa earlier when we were speaking, I don't agree with the approach. I'm not sure that a database, the establishment of a database, is something that should be put in legislation. I think it's more of a policy issue, and I'm a bit concerned about the bigger picture when I look at this is a representative from the same government that's seeking to lay off 200,000 civil servants, claiming issues to do with a bloated wage bill, and in the same vein he's talking about creating a database to recruit young people to work in the same civil service that is going to lay off 200,000 people. Something doesn't add up there. I think we need to be more creative in terms of creating employment opportunities for young people. And I'm not sure whether the mega projects that we've been seeing being implemented in the past 2 years are the way to go. We need to break down the macro economy into small micro economies at county level. Remember that David Ndii in a column on Saturday mentioned that formal white-collar jobs have only been going up by 46,000 a year for the past 15 years. So I don't know if that's where we need to be placing emphasis. We need to start looking at more and more opportunities for those people who don't have a formal education. How can we incorporate them meaningfully into being productive members of society? And this should be done at county level, not national level.
Actually, the legislation is both national and county. There's a Council of Governors, etc., put in there. But let me tell you, it is very easy to say and very lazy to say that let us grow the economy and let our young people get opportunities. That's what young people have been told for the last 50 years. A young person who has studied must feel that government is actually trying hard to find them an opportunity. They must know that, look, I'm not on my own. Many young people leave the universities in Nairobi, go back home to Turkana. They have no access to newspapers. They have no access to this jobs information. Don't you think that they should be able to go somewhere very close to their homes to be able to get, to apply for a job and to get this information? And finally, the reason why you must legislate certain things, for example, providing incentives to the private sector, because government is not what will create the jobs. It is facilitating the private sector. If you say, for example, that if you employ this number of people off of this database, maybe you can say if it's young people with this amount of experience, etc., we can give you a waiver on payroll tax. If a company is paying payroll tax of 250,000 and you waive that for a couple of years, they can be able to employ 5 more people. We must get creative on how we provide these opportunities. The bill does not deal with the supply side. The bill will not create jobs, but we must make sure it is fair. And the reason I agree with you on one thing, The bill asks for certain marks of identity when you get into the database. But once that goes up, it is blocked out. You will not be able to see somebody's ethnicity. You will not be able to see somebody's age. You will not be able to see somebody's name. Because unless you do that, you realize a lot of employment going on in our counties is very tribal, despite the County Government's Act saying that 30% of those who must be employed should not be from the dominant community. You must know somebody. How many of our young people know somebody in a big place to get a job? So this is creating an even playing field. It is your merit, it is your skills, it is what you have put up online.
I like that Mheshimiwa has mentioned the provision in the Constitution for 30% not being from the dominant community. Therefore, I expect his support for the Okoa Kenya referendum, which actually seeks to raise that threshold for county governments and for the national government as well, which unfortunately so far we haven't really been seeing being put into practice.
I think the referendum died. Is it still on? We had nothing about it for months.
I would
it's been dead.
It's been dead.
I think I appreciate what Johnson is working on, but it would seem to me even more interesting. I mean, how heavily are we taxed? What's the impact of that taxation on job creation? What's the access of any creative young person to loans? What's going to be the interest on that? And when we begin to address, we begin to implement measures at those levels, that we are putting more money in the pockets of the people, then they're able to invest it and create employment and opportunities. To me, it would look a much more proactive role. And I'm not dismissing what he's working at, but it would seem to me we need to go much further and try to look at how are we fighting corruption, for example, so that we can be able to put much more money in the public domain rather than being siphoned away.
But it is not either or. We can chew gum and walk. It is not that this bill is a magic wand. No, it is not. That silver bullet to deal with unemployment. It's concerted effort. One, you must deal with the supply side, with the economic issues. You must deal with the corruption issue. You must deal with the taxation, which is why I'm proposing incentives to create more employment. It's a concerted effort. And what I would like to see is professionals like Professor over here saying, look, this is a good beginning. This is how we build on it. That is the only reason I'm sharing it in public. A lot of bills go through Parliament and there's no participation. So we build on that noble idea and create something stronger.
We need to move
Please,
on.
one very important national issue that touches on this. You know, Mheshimiwa was a very strong advocate for the Youth Fund and the Uwezo Fund and all these things. Now, he's brought another solution for young people. He's put it on the table. We welcome it. It's a good idea. As I mentioned earlier, I don't agree with the approach. But we need to be more analytical about how we tackle these issues. Uwezo Fund, Youth Fund. Have we monitored and evaluated the success of these two initiatives before we hop onto this other thing? And one of the biggest limiting factors that we have in the success of these two initiatives is the issuance of IDs. As a young person, you cannot even begin to talk about loans if you do not have an ID, because you will not be able to open a bank account. You will not be able to access the Uwezo Fund, you will not be able to access the Youth Fund, and I'm sure you will not be able to get onto this database. But currently, as we speak, a large population of Kenyans, with about 1.2 million waiting cards in Nyanza, Kisii, and Western Province alone. What are we doing? What efforts are we seeing from the national government in terms of ensuring these Kenyans are not disenfranchised from the body politic of Kenya?
Is it clearly from what he says on the issue of IDs? If you look at the population growth over the past 3 years, those who've been able to turn 18 over the past few years in the counties he's mentioned, clearly are less than 1.2 million. The problem in issues of IDs is a systemic problem that stems from the time when CORD was in charge, or DM was in charge of the Ministry of Immigration when the late Kajwang was a minister. And these are things that are being sorted out. They must be sorted out.
Let me clarify.
Secondly,
that. He's raised a very important point. He's saying that problem stems from when CORD was in charge of the Ministry of Immigration.
It didn't start a year ago. That's what I'm saying.
Which is true. However, we need to be more analytical of that problem. Otieno Kajwang was indeed the Minister for Immigration. However, the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Finance at the time was His Excellency the President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. And he was the one responsible for for allocation of funds needed for issuance of IDs.
And this
he
could
was not doing
this will go to a whole different conversation, gentlemen.
As I respond to the bigger issue, first of all, you should understand how policy works. Ministers don't allocate resources. Budgets are appropriated in Parliament. That's why.
Gentlemen, we are losing
we
it.
do not have the constitution that we do now.
Even in the last Parliament, there was a budget and appropriations.
Constitutional dispensation.
Okay, let's move from that
Even in
bill
the last
to a
Parliament,
different bill from
Budget and
matters
Appropriations
employment.
Committee.
It's good that you've been able at least to enlighten our viewers more on what it is you're seeking to have happen. But let's talk about education a little. A lot of issues as well in that particular sector in the country, and we'll be getting to the ranking that now Parliament is seeking to reverse, have brought back. But you've written, Noah, a bill, education transition bill, and one of the things you said that is a crux in this bill is to include secondary school schooling over and above primary schooling. This would be in essence to oblige the government to make secondary school education compulsory and free for all children who sit for the KCPE examination. Talk to us a little bit more about this.
Yeah, this is a bill that we developed as a party in consultation with our Secretary for Political Affairs and Education, Mheshimiwa Opio, and I, the MP for Gunja. It was presented to Parliament last year. Basically, this bill seeks to amend the Free Primary Education Act such that basic education is no longer considered just primary education, but both primary and secondary education. And the reason why I'm saying this, if you look at last year's KCPE results, we had about 800,000 children sitting for KCPE and a transition rate of less than 50%, which means more than 400,000 children are being left out. And this also goes to the issue of school ranking. What happens to these kids when they don't proceed to secondary school? A lot of people have been talking about vocational training. Remember that your average standard 8 student is between 13, 15 years old. How do you now take this child, because that's what they are, and put them in terms of learning a trade and beginning to work? It even goes against the Geneva Convention on child labor. So basically, instead of embarking on ambitious mega projects such as the laptop project that would cost Kenyan billions, why not emphasize and channel these funds towards ensuring that all Kenyans get a basic level of education? Some interesting statistics. In the former Northeastern province, the Kenya Bureau of Statistics came up with a figure that suggested that 98% of women there were illiterate and could not read or write. And just to compound that even further, the WHO put out some figures that suggest that if a woman can read and write, just basic reading and writing, it improves her, the chances of her children living beyond the age of 5 by 50%. That's the kind of impact that education can have on Kenyans.
Okay.
So this bill seeks to offer a practical solution for generations to come that will seek to address not just issues of education and health, but employment, as Professor put forward earlier.
Prof, what do you think about that?
I think it's critical. I mean, the role that I think education shouldn't just be seen as an avenue to a job, to employment, but to life. Because the difference that it makes, and I appreciate the data that he's quoting. For example, when you expose a young girl to up to the 8th class education and see the ripple of that, it's not just that she is going to be able to take good care of her kids, reduce mortality rate, but it's going to have an impact on the budget of Ministry of Health, in the sense that the visits to, family planning, visits to health facilities is going to reduce, and those resources can be relocated to other sectors of the economy. So it's really huge, and it's going to have an impact on democracy as well that we're talking about. So the more we invest in education, but it's really important. And for me, I'm looking at it not just in the infrastructure, but even in terms of the teaching, the human resource that is there. And I think we have treated our teachers too often like an appendage in the system of the employment chain. So much so that these people who have got such significant influence on the young generation tend to be looked at, paid lowly, and tend to be treated in such a manner that their dignity in society is not
upgraded.
Yeah, it's not enhanced. And I would want to see a situation where teachers are recognized, are respected as professionals in the kind of work that they do. Then that gives much more strength to the whole education process that we
Bwana
have.
Chairman, your thoughts on it, given that the government has this ambitious project of laptops, rather than just concentrate on primary, why not expand the whole debate to secondary
Noah says
education as
forget
well?
about the laptops.
It's not either or, and that's a program we're going to do. I'll come back here with one of the laptops once we start.
Yes, please.
The
what
point is,
that?
been waiting
actually,
for 2 years.
there's been a lot of progress around that with the companies that had bid and went to court. And soon we'll be seeing something. I can say that authoritatively. Let me say this. I chair the Young Parliamentarians Association. I think you're aware of that. And we did a strategic plan in 2013 when we got in. And one of the pillars of it is education. And this is an issue. Even within our strategic plan, we've said that we must have 100% transition rate from class 1 to form 4. Look at the scenario. What happens? Every year, I remember in 2014 KCP, when the results were being announced, first of all, they said 850,000 students had sat for KCP. That alone was alarming. Because in 2005, there were 1.5 million who joined class 1. What happened to them?
Yeah.
Then from the 800,000, only 600,000 got placement. And from the 600,000, only 450,000 were able to go to Form 1. Every year, we're letting children slip out of the education system. Now, we tell children in class 8 that you're too stupid to go to Form 1, not because they are, because I believe any child who can do class 8 can do Form 1, but because of our own inadequacies of infrastructure and investment in secondary education. Every primary school in this country, in the rural areas, has space for secondary school classrooms. It does. And you see, unless we change that system and make it clear that education is until you get to Form 4, after that, then you can choose to go to a technical institute, you can choose to be a cobbler, you can choose to be a doctor, etc. Before then, it is not, it's not adequate. So I support that move. I support 100% transition rate fully, because that is a ticking time bomb. You know, all of these hundreds and thousands from the year I've just mentioned, between class 1 and class 8, that's almost 500,000 out there in society. Between class 8 and Form 1, it's another 300,000 out there in society.
Right.
However, you know, and this is the room for policy analysis. I don't think it is necessary. The same way you said mine should not be. I don't think it should be legislated. I think it's a policy issue, because you must invest money in infrastructure. You must put money in, and even through the CDF model or through ESP, the economic stimulus model, we can start upgrading all our primary schools around the country and increasing classrooms year by year. It's very simple to do. But of course, when it comes to the floor of the house, because if it's a good idea, I will support it. I will definitely support.
It's interesting, both of you think the bills you're both supporting should not be legislative, should all be policy issues.
I'll just give an example, but I'll support it because it makes sense.
The wording of the bill is very key. As you will see, it proposes to change basic education from just primary to both primary and secondary. The impact of that will now be up to the policy makers.
I think we time is running, and
let me just mention something here, because they have not captured it. And going around the country, one of the things that you're seeing is increasingly a higher rate of dropout from schools of boys. And you look at the point of entry, study 1, and as these classes progress, as they get to study 8, you're increasingly seeing less and less of boys. And I know that previously girls have been seriously disadvantaged. And I don't know what is happening in society, and maybe those of us in the academy ought to put much more weight on this to find out what are the factors informing this. But why are boys dropping out of school at such an alarming rate, and what are the sociological factors and implications of this in years to come?
Okay, maybe as you close, because I know we must close. I've just remembered something, because I was talking about the nexus between employment and security. The most recent statistic that anyone can check, look at Kibra constituency. 4,000 new jobs in Kibra constituency under the Jubilee government through NYS has made a reduction of crime by 40% already. That alone must be a startling statistic for you to look at, which is why we must focus on these issues. No, it has been made. It's out there.
The correlation that 4,000 jobs in Kibra have reduced crime in Kenya by 40%.
Not in Kenya, in Kibra. The crime in Kibra has gone down by 40% based on 4,000 new jobs. It is, you're a doctor. Yeah. It is simple.
Okay, I think before we move from matters education, the MPs were passing a motion yesterday in regards to school ranking coming back, and of course this is after the CS had banned it and if you listen to the debate, there's very strong arguments from both sides. And Dr. Noah, I'd like to hear from you what you think of school ranking, whether it's the way to go, given that we live in a competitive society anyway, and at the end of the day, you'd still want to know where do you fall in terms of your education. What do you think of the school ranking? Should we be brought back?
When I look at the whole concept of school ranking, I find it to be a bit simplistic because it does not identify what the problems are in education, neither does it seek to resolve them. Since the free primary education project began, we've been looking at school enrollment. For example, in Seme constituency where I come from, in primary school, it was 38,000. That's the only thing that we've been looking for. We haven't actually sought to analyze whether in the past children could read and write by standard 4 and whether today they can do that by standard 1. We're not trying to see what skills are they getting out of the whole education process. So if we have a batch of 38,000 people going through standard 1 all the way to standard 8 and we rank them, and if this ranking is then used to disenfranchise a big batch of them, then I don't think it will serve any purpose. Which is why we need to develop a culture of monitoring and evaluation, the impact of monitoring and evaluating the impact of the social programs that we put out into society. So school ranking for me doesn't go far enough. It's not a bad idea, but it doesn't go far enough.
Okay, Professor, what do you think?
I just have no time for school ranking. I don't
Why
think
not?
it serves the commercial sector of the education system to be able to advertise and propagate and say this is what our school is. But look at it. I mean, what else? I mean, this competition, and I like what the DP said the other day. You are compacting all this that this kid has done in 8 years into 2 hours of exam, and you say, okay, this is this is that, this is that. I wish that Parliament would have just said, finish up with the exam. Get rid of the school ranking altogether. I think I'm with the Ministry of Education.
But isn't the exam itself a way of ranking? The fact that you're sitting down to do an exam?
I think it's it's a way of helping us assess where we are, where this person is, and could be useful in placement of the candidates. But to use it as a way of ranking these schools, and look at the way and I have a problem with all these things. Look at the kids who are ranked at the top in standard 8. Where are they from 4 years later? And those who are ranked 4 years later, where are they 4 years later at the end of the day? So I think it's all, I would really go for the idea, use this system as a way of helping us to be able to place the candidates, but as a system of helping us rank, it's only helping those who have invested in the commercial sector to...
I think the two is to look at it, and of course Parliament resoundingly expressed itself yesterday on it. I wasn't too... I didn't have deep feelings about the whole debate about ranking, because there are two aspects. First of all, within ranking, when the results come out, even within the same school, you've already ranked those students.
Right.
Are we using the right indicators to show the progress that a child has made in their abilities? Are we talking about just academics? What about extracurricular activities? Shouldn't that be used also to rank the students internally? Because what you want to show at the end of Form 4 is that this is a well-rounded young person who's responsible, etc. Currently, we only look at academics, and that for me itself is an issue. Secondly, we have seen a lot of bad practices by many schools, especially when it comes to class 8 exams, separating students, registering them into different schools so that they get higher ranking. So it has really commercialized our education. But on the other hand, and listening to my colleagues yesterday, there was an aspect of the performance of those schools and how how them as playing oversight in their constituencies can be able to gauge and say, this school is serious, this one is not serious, we need to put in more effort, maybe this one needs more classrooms, more facilities. And that has been a very good basis for many members of Parliament across the country to focus on specific schools that are not doing well in their constituencies. And the results from that, I think a study should be done. Many of them attest that from the results that this school had been producing, we came in and put in new laboratories, we increased the facilities, the infrastructure, and now they're performing well, and now the constituency has gone up. So I think there are two sides to the coin. I don't think it is either too bad or too good. We need to have a more holistic way of measuring performance in schools.
We need to wrap up.
To add on to that, please.
Yes.
It also has to do with the Education Transition Bill. If this bill is supported and passed by our colleagues in Parliament, it will actually eliminate that commercial nature of ranking. If everybody is guaranteed who sits for KCP of transition to Form 1, then that commercial nature where schools are trying to get ahead of each other will be eliminated and addressed by this bill.
And it's also a pride issue. You see, I wear this badge for Lenana School because I'm proud of my school. It used to rank well. But recently it's been performing terribly. You know.
But
maybe what we need to do is to get rid of exams altogether.
Altogether, perhaps.
No.
Yesterday, KTN started running this series, Graft Diaries, and it really to spotlight some of those issues on reports that have been released by the PAC. So this is where we wind up. To you, Sakaja, I will ask, has the government now, with all the tough talk from the president we've had on corruption, empty just rhetoric without any action that we are seeing and any will politically to fight this truly to the end of it, to ensure that Kenya is a better place? And to you now, so we just all quickly go through this. Opposition, has it not then lost that moral authority, seeing that your very own are implicated and murdered by these allegations of corruption? So where do Kenyans stand in as far as ensuring government is still being kept in check? And Prof, for the Kenyans watching this, it appears to be a hopeless situation. EACC as well, just being part of that puddle that is, receiving its flack in terms of corruption allegations as well, and in internal leadership wrangles. Let's start with you, Bona, Member of Parliament.
Oh, me.
Yes.
Let me say this. You see, the new constitution created a set of institutions that must work in a complementary nature to deal with the issue of corruption. We have an independent ethics and anti-corruption commission that no matter what, and also an independent director, DPP's office, public prosecutor's office, cannot be directed by the president, cannot be directed by parliament. They have to do their work, the prosecutions. You go to the DPP's office, he says, I cannot charge people. EACC has not given it to me. I think that entire mess is the problem. No matter how tough the president talks, no matter how tough we talk, maybe as leaders in Jubilee, somebody, I cannot go arrest you and take you to court because I found you. The other institutions, and I think it is very, very, very shameful and worrying to see even the kind of internal wrangles that are coming up within the Anti-Corruption Commission. Fundamentally, and this, I've written about this in 2009, I wrote about it in 2011. I don't believe in the model of having a separate ethics and anti-corruption commission doing or rather arrogating itself responsibilities that other entities should do. Because what happens is this, you have prosecutors within the Anti-Corruption Commission, you have investigators there. But at the police department, you also have investigators. When the police come across an issue of corruption, they say, issue yetu, here ni wale watu wa anti-corruption. When somebody from EACC takes the file to the DPP's office, these are two people, probably went to school together, same qualifications, the guy from EACC is probably earning 10 times more. There is sabotage internally. They say, now you guys, you think you're special because you're on that other side, and does not work. If you look at the Indonesian model of that kind of institution, it is more proactive, because what we have not only in Indonesia but also in the US is an interagency office that has people from all those offices sitting together. The Office of Governance and Ethics, for example, where you have the police, you have the prosecutor, and you have anti-corruption specialists. Not to arrogate this responsibility to a totally separate institution.
Okay.
So that's my problem. Lastly, on the issue of corruption, let me leave it there then.
Yes. Okay, no.
You asked whether the opposition has lost the moral high ground on the issue of corruption. I want to say this, that there have been allegations. And until proven, there remain allegations. Remember, even the president and his deputy himself faced charges of crimes against humanity at the ICC. And they popularly said out there that innocent until proven guilty. So our position as a party is just that. Let the rule of law take its course. Those found guilty should be held culpable. But as regards our ability to talk down on corruption or to point it out, I don't think that's hampered in any way. Our party leader, the Right Honorable Raila Odinga, had commissioned a task force report into the affairs of the Kisumu County government that were drawing consternation amongst the public, and a report was submitted on this. We are now traveling to Kisumu tomorrow to implement this report. So we still have not only the moral authority, but the ability to confront the ugly head of corruption if and where it arises.
Okay.
I think for a citizen, it's just frustration. Talk, and more talk. And it's frustrating.
Yeah. And that's all. Okay, then let me finish your point.
It's frustrating, but I think it also concerns, I mean, putting yourself in the shoes of a Kenyan. You have a government that is talking tough about corruption. You're not seeing much action. We want to see heads rolling, really. Yeah. People who are implicated, you want to see that. But also the government can't make the heads roll. You have other institutions that are supposed to do it. They have their own internal wrangles. Then you have an opposition that you don't even trust to raise issues of corruption, because many of the leaders there have been tainted and mentioned in corruption cases. Where does that leave Kenyans? It's a really terrible situation. And I call upon Honorable Shakil Chabir, because he leads a parliamentary network against corruption, to actually come up and do something about it. Bring proposals of how we deal with this. Because on one hand, somebody's hand is tied. The other one, we don't trust these ones to raise the issue. Politics is mixed into it. If you look at what's happening in the PSC, it has nothing to do with it. It's just ODM politics playing out.
And maybe as we summarize, we cannot ignore the fact that they say perception is reality. And as much as you are innocent until proved guilty, there is definitely a shadow, a cloud of doubt now on the PSC and the opposition having that mandate to actually keep the government in check. How is ODM going to deal with that?
I think there's a bigger picture that we need to analyze here. There are allegations of impropriety against individuals in the Public Accounts Committee, because anything that was happened was not conducted.
One of those individuals, the
was
Secretary
not conducted
General of
as
ODM.
sanctioned by the political party. Remember that people are individuals as well. Someone may be at the helm of an institution, but when they engage in an individual activity, they don't do so with the mandate and backing of the party. That said, allegations remain allegations until proven. However, the bigger picture that I was trying to point out
very briefly
was that there is a government official who is alleged to have given hefty bribes in exchange for a favorable report on confidential expenditure in the office of the president. While we focus on PAC, let's not lose sight of what this means for the larger population.
All right, and that is where we'll end it. Dr. Noah Okala, Secretary for Science and Technology, National Executive Council, ODM. Also, Professor Levi Obonya, who's Dean School of Communications at Daystar University, and Johnson Sakaja, who's TNA National Chairman. We thank you all for being with us today on State of the Nation. And that is where we wrap it up, but don't go away. Morning Express continues shortly.
And we have the Fitness Thursday, so get yourselves ready. We're just about to sweat it out.
Yeah, join in.
That's what it's meant to be. Join us.
Yeah, join us for that. It's a wrap.